Yo, what's going on, guys? It's your boy Aaron2 for 20, bringing you guys my GBA D-League Season 4 draft analysis. Now, I know you could already see the first pick on the screen. I'll get to that in a moment. I just want to quickly go into a little in-depth in case you don't know. So basically, the D-League, of course, we just did our draft, and that's why I'm uploading my draft recap now. I ended up, originally, I actually was going to have 4th pick. I stupidly traded my pick with Greg, and I really actually regret trading picks. However, I think I kind of like how my team ended up in general. But I ended up having originally the 4th pick. And I thought to myself, you know, okay, I can get something like Tapu Koko Hawlucha, I get Mega Latios maybe, I could get Celesteela, Zygarde, Lando T, even Mew. I kind of considered Mew, but I ultimately kind of shied away from that. So ultimately, though, I had a lot of options. So Greg hits me up, he's like, do you want to trade picks? And I was like, I could get a really solid core, I can maybe get Megasis or Zygarde. I figured that was a very likely core that made it to my pick. So I was like, okay, you know what? Sure, I will trade picks with you, Greg. So I ended up having a 12th pick. I figured having a wheel and getting a dependable core to draft around was very solid in my opinion. So I ended up losing out on every single pick I wanted to get first in turn because I traded picks with Greg. And he didn't even end up getting Koko Lucha, which was like really weird because if you saw the stream, obviously, you know, Greg got Tapu Koko. I still like his team, obviously, and I still like a lot of the other drafts as well. But it was just really weird to me. He sort of wasted the Koko pick in my eyes by not getting Hawlucha, like your boy would have done if he got Tapu Koko. But this isn't about getting Tapu Koko first, because I didn't get it first. This is about my actual first pick, and that ended up actually being Mega Kangaskhan. So I'd only ever used Mega Kangaskhan one other time, and it was in a two weeks of this one league I joined right before Ultra Sun and Ultra Moon came out that I dropped because it was literally dead. God damn it. So I ended up picking up Mega Kangaskhan, of course. I figured, you know, I've almost never used it, and even then when I did use it for those 2 weeks, I didn't really like my draft with it, besides the fact that I also had Goth, and I actually kind of considered Gothitelle, as it was Shadow Tag Goth, and I may pick it up. I may end up doing free agents to pick up Goth, not gonna lie, I kind of like it on this team, but that will be dependent on how I like the rest of my mons in this team. So I decided I was gonna get Mega Kangaskhan. I figured there was a lot that I could possibly build in this team. I didn't really like a lot of the options to core it with necessarily, but I liked how overall I could have potentially fit it on my team. And I definitely waited a little too long for certain mons, not gonna lie, but it was a lot of middle picks. I only ended up, if you weren't there for the stream, I only ended up getting like one tier 1. I got like a bunch of tier 2s. I sort of middle tiered my draft. But I felt like that was a lot better than just getting a second tier 1. However, as I said, I might pick up Goth later on in the season, depending on how much I like this team. Just because I really like the idea of Goth plus Mega Kangaskhan. But anyway, so Mega Kangaskhan, though, I figured was a very solid mon, in my opinion, on this team. Has, of course, phenomenal bulk and attack overall. Parental Bond is a phenomenal ability. I have options to set up such as Curse and Power Up Punch. However, I cannot run Curse with Wish. I learned that in prepping for one of my games. It was extremely disappointing that I cannot run both in the same set, but we will deal with it, I guess. So overall, though, I really like Mega Kangaskhan. Gives me a backup Wish Passer, of course. Gives me just an overall fat mon that can also be really offensive, and has a great speed tier too. This thing has almost no flaws, to be honest. At least almost no noticeable flaws. And even then, things like Rocky Helmet, you can work around them with different special coverage. And I feel like even my physical offense, I can work around people bringing potential Rocky Helmets for the most part, as a lot of my physical offense isn't really contact based, and I'll get to that when we get to those picks. Next up, I picked up Thundurus-I. I really don't like Thundurus-I, to be honest, not gonna lie. I think I may, should I decide to pick up Goth, I may very well drop Thundurus and pick up some sort of lower tier electric type in exchange. But overall, though, I decided I was gonna try and work with it. I figured that Thundurus has a really solid speed tier, base 111, as beating things such as Mega Latios, of course, other 110s, I guess regular Latios is another 110, and I have really nice coverage in general with things such as Dark, Fighting, Electric, Fly, of course. This is actually my only Z-Mon as well. I figured that Thundurus was... I had a lot of mons that could have been a Z-Mon, not gonna lie, but I didn't have a lot that worked while going with Thundurus as my only tier 5 option. If you guys even follow me on Twitter, you guys know what that is. But overall, though, I figured that there just wasn't really much, I guess, that I want to Z with Thundurus, so that's why it is my only Z-Mon. It has a bunch of setup options, such as Agility, Bulk Up, Nasty Plot, etc. I have also really solid mixed offenses as well, with two very good abilities being Defiant and Prankster. Prankster allowing me to get priority and setup, or even substitutes, and even Defog now, it gets Prankster Defog. And Defiant is also great for countering other Defoggers, as Physical Thundurus is very, very threatening in my opinion. I feel like honestly I prefer Physical Thundurus, but that's it. Overall, both options are not bad in my opinion, as they both have very phenomenal coverage and great ways of setting up. I kind of hope that Thundurus this season goes better than it did in my MPL Season 3, which was the very beginning of Sun and Moon. I haven't used Thundurus since, and I'm hoping it goes better. However, I'm not overly sure. Thundurus kind of was sort of, at least in terms of my overall draft, it doesn't work the best, I feel like, with the rest of my team. It still works, but there are definitely a lot of other options that I feel like I prefer on this draft. Next up, though, I have gotten myself Hydreigon. I figured that Hydreigon was a very solid option in terms of my team overall. It has very solid speed tier, base 98, I believe. So another really fast-ish mon. Nothing insanely fast though, but it still has decent speed tier. Hydreigon also ends up giving me Dark and Dragon coverage. I figured that I actually almost got Latios, however regular Latios got taken. This pick was going to be Latios plus Volcanion. I'll get into Volcanion in a minute. It's a wheel pick, so obviously I got it. That was my ideal second wheel core. However, Latios got taken. It got taken, I think, like round 2, a couple picks after me, actually. So that was really, really sad that I lost out on Latios. However, I feel like Thundurus still kind of works on my team, so I'm not overly upset. And Hydreigon obviously still works on my team as well. It still gives me Tailwind like Latios would have given me. It still gives me Defog. Still gives me a Dragon typing. Actually, this also now gives me Momentum with U-turn. So that's a plus. Whereas with Latios, the only Momentum I would have is if I went for Memento and sacked it off. So that's definitely an advantage, at least to Hydreigon. Also has very solid mixed move pool. I know Latios does as well, and it still has mixed offenses as well. But it's sort of just another thing. It's basically just like a tier 2 Latios in terms of what my team needs it to be. Obviously, Latios has other advantages, such as it has Dragon Dance, whereas Hydreigon does not have that. But in terms of what I needed my Dragon type to be, Hydreigon fits all those roles. So I'm not overly disappointed in having to grab Hydreigon. It gives me more points to work on my middle tiers. So as I said, I was very happy about that. That's also the reason I didn't get Latios, is just because I feel like in terms of being a mixed Dragon type, or even just having the ability to choose between physical or special, it definitely lacked that as well. And while I could always get Healing Wish support, I figured that having Hydreigon just offered essentially a tier 2 Latios to what I needed it to be in this draft. And that ended up meaning that I can get a lot of other mons that had higher tier value and could just offer more to my draft overall. So that's sort of why I went with Hydreigon. Also, I believe Hydreigon gets Taunt, if I'm not mistaken, which is also very nice. Decent speed taunter. I have a couple other taunters as well in my draft, I believe. I think Thundurus gets it. I'm not 100% sure. I know at the very least a couple other picks in my draft get it. Next up, I got myself Volcanion. This is my slowest mon as of right now in the draft, of course. Still being base 70 and still has ways around its speed tier, such as with Flame Charge. Really solid mixed offensive mon, base 110 physical attack, which people don't really use just because Steam Eruption is essentially a strong Scald that hits like a Hydro Pump. And I believe it has 100 base accuracy, if I'm not mistaken, which is very nice. Has really solid coverage, actually, with Water Fire. Water Fire hits so well. I sort of underestimated how well this coverage hits until I actually started doing mocks with it and doing builds with it, obviously. But Volcanion actually has a phenomenal overall, it's just a really solid offensive presence. And I've never actually used this thing before, and I think I'm sort of regretting never using it, as it's a very cool mon, to be honest. It has base 70 speed, as I mentioned, but that's still very fixable with a Scarf. Outspeeding, I believe at level 100 it can even outspeed base 130s, if I'm not mistaken. I'm not 100% sure, but I know at the very least I'm fairly certain it can speed tie. Obviously, I do have the Tailwind from Hydreigon. I think Thundurus might also get it, but I know at the very least Hydreigon gets it. I also have a couple other Tailwind mons later on in my draft, such as my next pick and a couple picks later on down the road. So speed is definitely not an issue with Volcanion, at least in terms of my overall draft. Fire, water typing, of course, as I mentioned, very good offensive. Not much can really wall both typings. There are obviously dual type combinations that can wall both, or obviously other mons that can sponge both, such as, of course, Chansey and Blissey can sponge both because they're special monsters, but you do have ways around that with Superpower, for example. So this thing definitely does have ways around other options that would normally check it. Like if I was bringing this thing on the ladder, let's say, you would sort of know it's going to be mostly special with maybe like a mixed Superpower throw in for Blissies that would lure it. But if I'm using this thing in format, I can just build it around what I need to counter in terms of what would normally wall, especially offensive Volcanion. So overall, I really do like Volcanion on this team. I think it provides a lot in terms of my offense. I do have options around the ground weakness, for example, with Hydreigon and Thundurus being immunities. And I also feel like I will have options around electric typing down the road. So in terms of its weaknesses, I think this thing fit very well into my team. Also, of course, I have options around the rock weakness as another. Essentially, it just is countered by, I believe, the same answers to my electric weaknesses, because both my ground type would just cover both of those. Next up, though, I got myself Decidueye. As I mentioned, my physical offense definitely does have ways around Rocky Helmet. Decidueye gives me a long reach ability, which means that all of its normal contact moves, such as Leaf Blades, I think Spirit Shackle as well. I know Sucker Punch is another contact move. So basically, all those physical options, also Brave Bird, I guess, that would normally be deterred because of Rocky Helmets, with Mega Kangaskhan being on my draft, I now have ways around those. So that means I can run a physical offensive Decidueye, and I don't need to worry about Rocky Helmet spam if my opponent chooses to bring some. On, let's say, like a Rocky Helmet Reuniclus, for example, that would sponge hits from a Mega Kangaskhan, I could just run Spirit Shackle Decidueye, or even Sucker Punch. I'm not sure if Spirit Shackle gets affected. I forget if that's contact or not. So that may have been a bad example. But let's say Rocky Helmet Donphan, for example. If that is my Mega Kang answer, I could just run, or my opponent's Mega Kang answer, I should say, or even like a Garchomp. I could always run like a SD Leaf Blade set. I could always just run other physically offensive options. Obviously, Assault Vest is always an item that will just boost Spadef, as well as my team is very specially offensive to work around potential Rocky Helmets, which is why having Decidueye with the long reach could not only get around Assault Vest, but it could also get around Rocky Helmets. So that's basically why I picked it up. Also gives me another Defogger. I have a lot of Defoggers already. I have 4 of them. I think I get a 5th Defogger. Yeah, I get a 5th Defogger, and I also get a Spinner. I'm fairly certain Volcanion gets Defog. I know the Thundurus, Hydreigon, and Decidueye do. I know I have another option later on that gets Defog, and I know I have a Spinner later on down the road. The Spinner's going to be probably my... I feel like, to be honest, having that many Defoggers is sort of not as good, because my team does get a little spike stacky down the road with one of my picks that you guys probably already know. So having the Spinner, I guess, later on, which I'll get into, I believe, my round 7 or 8 pick. I know it's one of those two because I picked it up on that wheel. I'll get into why I picked that up, mainly just because of the spin. So anyway, though, I feel like this Decidueye, though, offers a decent amount to my team. Fire, Water, Grass with that and Volcanion is really nice. Tailwind user, again, it's another Tailwind Mon, which helps very nice with Volcanion in general. I feel like it pairs very well with that. And overall, I'm just sort of really excited to use Decidueye. I've wanted to use it for a while now, and it just worked really well with this team. Next up, I got myself Bronzong. I was really indifferent if I wanted to get this or Mamoswine as my next pick. I decided ultimately I kind of had to get Bronzong, as I figured that Bronzong, it fit really well on a lot of other people's teams. There was a couple other people who I knew needed ground types, and one of them already mentioned to me he wasn't going to get Mamoswine. So I felt like that Bronzong was the option I more so need to grab. I'm not sure if this sniped anyone or not, but I felt like overall Bronzong offered too much to my team. Gives me Trick Room option in case I don't want to run Tailwind, which is very nice, especially because a lot of my lower picks end up being very good Trick Room abusers. Also gives me another Rocker, as I believe this is actually my first Stealth Rocker. I have a couple other Stealth Rockers in my next 2 picks as well, and I get a Spike Stacker at the pick after that. So I start to fix my lack of hazards in these next few picks. Bronzong also has a really solid Steel typing, and the fact that it is immune to ground is very nice. Also has Heat Proof if I want to give the ground immunity. Let's say if I'm fighting an Excadrill, for example, a Mold Breaker, or in a Mold Breaker Haxorus that would get rid of my Levitate. I could always run Heat Proof for options such as their Fire types, and maybe try and just sponge those hits better and catch them off guard. So Bronzong definitely does have some viability in terms of what ability I want to run on it. Very solid Steel for tier 4, to be honest. I feel like that tier 4 Bronzong is definitely... I'm not sure if I'd pick it tier 3, not gonna lie, but I feel like for tier 4 it's a really solid option. It's one of the best tier 4 mons in my opinion. I know Wolfie said it best when he thinks that it should not be a tier 4. I'm not sure if I'd necessarily agree to that extent, but I think at the very least, in the sense that he meant that it is a very phenomenal tier 4, I do agree with that. It also has plenty of other options in terms of Z potential. Should I decide that I want to get rid of Thundurus, as I said, I'm sort of deciding if I want to keep that or get rid of it for Goth, and then make one of my tier 2 mons a Z user, which would mean in turn I can give Bronzong Z as well, which is very potential, or a very possible potential that I could have. Overall, though, I feel like I just like what Bronzong overall offers to my draft. I feel like it gives me a lot of potential to work around in terms of building with it. It really builds well in a lot of my cores. And yeah, next up, though, I got myself Aerodactyl. This pick was originally going to be, well, originally I was, instead of getting Aerodactyl, I was going to get Archaeops, and then get myself a Mamoswine here. But I decided ultimately that I sort of had to go with Aerodactyl because Mamoswine got taken, and I figured I might as well just use this points to bump up my... Since not only did Mamoswine get taken, but Kirk also got taken this round. A lot of other ground types that I was going for actually got picked the round before. I decided to go with Bronzong, and then Mamoswine got taken, and it was sort of like my last option, I guess. But I felt like the Bronzong just offered more to my team than Mamoswine did, so Mamoswine will definitely be missed. However, it did allow me to get Aerodactyl in terms of buffing up my potential Archaeops. So Aerodactyl does give me a base 130 speed mon. Archaeops would only give me 110, and my team would have ended up ultimately peaking at 111 base speed, which isn't exactly the best speed tier to peak at, but it still definitely wouldn't have been awful, as I did have a lot of tailwind potential. I do overall like Aerodactyl in terms of giving me a fast Taunter, it gives me a fast Rock Setter. Also, it's another mon that even if, let's say, I drop Bronzong in later on, this is another potential tier 4 I could Z, so I figured in terms of the long term, should I decide that I don't like Thundurus and that I still don't like it in general as a mon, I have other backups in terms of tier 4 mons I could potentially Z. So overall though, Aerodactyl just offers potential Z-mon in the should I drop Thundurus case, gives me a decent offensive move pool as well for a tier 4 mon, or a tier 3 mon I should say. Actually, yeah, I forgot this thing isn't tier 4, fuck. So I guess I couldn't Z it with a tier 2 mon. But overall though, I feel like Aerodactyl just offers a decent amount to my draft in terms of fast rocker. It's another flying type, so in case of Thundurus does happen to go, it sort of just cushions potential trades should they happen to happen, I guess, and that's the main reason I picked it up. Also, it's a fast rocker, and I figured it's literally just a better Archaeops. It is 100% a better Archaeops, and I figured if I'm getting a lower tier ground type anyway, I might as well get a higher tier rock flying type. There wasn't really much to that. That's sort of just what I ended up going with. Next up, I got Donphan. This ended up being my ground type. I definitely would have preferred to have Mamoswine here, but I'm not ultimately too mad about this, as Donphan does give me a spinner, gives me priority with Ice Shard should I need it for potential mons such as maybe a Landorus, or other mons that are like Dragon Flying, for example, such as, well, I guess Garchomp isn't Dragon Flying, but it still is 4 times weak to Ice Shard. So other mons, maybe like just physical offensive, such as Salamence or Garchomp, I figured it just gives me priority Ice Shard. Ice Shard's never really a bad move to have in terms of priority, even if it's non-stab. And that wasn't necessarily obviously the reason for picking it, but it sort of just helps, I guess. As flying types, especially like dragon types, I don't have the best ways around right now. Really, my only dragon immunity or dragon deterrent is a Donphan, and well, not Donphan, is a Bronzong. But obviously, most dragons do have coverage for Bronzong, such as Fire Blast, Fire Fang, of course. So I figured this just gives me a backup tankier mon that can take hits and still deal damage to potential dragons. I figured that also, obviously, the spinner gives me sturdy, which guarantees I can get up rocks, or even can guarantee I clear hazards away if my opponent tries to set them up versus me. I do have Edgequake coverage, of course. This is Stab Earthquake as well, which is very nice. Ultimately, it's just really solid electric immunity as well. I really like Donphan as a mon in general in this draft. It's also a potential Rocky Helmet user if I want to, let's say, if I'm fighting a Ditto, for example, they could potentially copy Mega Kangaskhan. I could always run Rocky Helmet Donphan as a deterrent to that. As Ditto did get picked up, as you saw on one of the draft slides, it was the pick before me on one of the picks, I believe. If not, I know it gets picked up like right before me by Goldoa at some point in the draft. Overall, though, I really just like what Donphan had to offer to my team in terms of a guaranteed stealth rocker. Also gives me priority, as my team doesn't really have the best priority. It's really just Sucker Punch, Decidueye at this point in my draft, and Fake Out Mega Kangaskhan. But it's really hard to justify running Fake Out on Mega Kangaskhan, I feel like, in terms of what other options it offers. Anyway, next up, this is probably the only pick you guys clicked on to see if I actually draft. I drafted Shelmet. I told you guys I would draft it. I got it. I'm not gonna act like Shelmet is the best pick in the world, but it is. Shelmet does give me dual spikes. It gives me recover. It is the only mon that can take on Marshadow in the OU metagame, even if it's like banded. So you know, that's definitely why I drafted Shelmet. I definitely would have drafted it anyway. Enough said. We got Hariyama next. Originally this pick, I was very indifferent if I wanted to get. There was 2 options I could have gotten, basically. I could have either gotten myself Hariyama and Sylveon, or I could have got myself Aromatisse, and I forgot what the other fighting type was, to be honest. I think it was Lucario? I know there was a tier 2 fighting type. I can't remember what it was. I could always look back at my draft plan. But overall, in fact, you know what? I actually kind of want to now, to be honest. But overall, though, it was basically either Hariyama Sylveon or Tier 2 Fighting type and Aromatisse. I figured that Hariyama Sylveon was just better in terms of trick room abusing, as I do have, for example, the Guts boost on Hariyama, which is very nice. It gives me a status absorber as well in that department. But overall, the Guts boost does allow for me to just take hits better in terms of like statuses such as Toxic or Burns, and then I can deal damage back in terms of my opponent trying to fuck me over. So, oh yeah, it was Conk. Conk was the other one. So I guess Conk would have literally filled this role the same way. Overall, though, I feel like Hariyama just tankier as well, and also gives me thick fat, as my team does have a little bit of an ice weakness, but I'm definitely going to manage around it, as I obviously do have things such as Volcanion that can handle ice types. I have Hariyama. I have Bronzong, obviously. I have just plenty of ways in terms of offensively dealing with them. Even Aerodactyl is another mon, for example, and same as Thundurus that can handle ice types offensively, but they don't necessarily switch in on them. Hariyama, though, potentially with an Assault Vest, could switch in on those ice types, and even then, ice type isn't necessarily a common offensive typing for a stab. It's more so a coverage option. So a lot of those non-stab ice beams or blizzards or even ice punches from potential electric types such as Electivire, or if it was Lazera Aura, I have options around those things such as I said Hariyama or Volcanion. But the thick fat, I figured, just gives me more of a cushion in that department, which is why I ultimately decided on Hariyama Sylveon over Conk and Aromatisse. Also because I figured that Aromatisse just fit better on more people's drafts. There's more people that could afford to take Aromatisse later on, and I figured that Conk was a potential mon that could be picked up by a couple other coaches, and I figured that it was more likely that I got Hariyama Sylveon than Conk Aromatisse. So that's ultimately why I went with that. And finally, as I said, I went with Sylveon. This was the last pick of the draft. I figured that really solid fairy type helps me complete my Fairy's Dragon Steel Core, which I actually really like on this team. Hydreigon, Sylveon, and Bronzong, really solid in my opinion. Sylveon also gives me a backup Wish Passer, so I don't need to run Wish Mega Kang every week. Gives me a Cleric as well, as I did lack a Cleric. Also, Fairy type offensively is fairly good, and this thing is, I believe, base 110 special attack, which is very nice. I have not the best coverage on Sylveon, but Hidden Power plus Fairy plus Ghost with Shadow Ball hits at least fairly okay. Psyshock also is on there, and I think it also gets Psychic, but I know at the very least it does get Psyshock. So I do definitely have ways around running this thing, not just as a wall, but overall it will probably be more so ran as a wall. And yeah, I think I'm pretty content with how my draft ended up being overall. I think some things that I may end up, as I said, I might end up dropping Thundurus, and in turn I would probably drop Bronzong as well with that for potentially like a Magneton, for example. And Magneton Goth may very well end up being that Steel and then Psychic and Electric combination, I guess. That's sort of the only thing I could even think about possibly picking up, and if I did that, I would probably make Magneton my Z user, as Hariyama is probably going to be more so AV or Flame Orb, and then maybe Z, like Hydreigon, or maybe even Volcanion, as Volcanion with like Z Solar Beam could be potentially threatening to bulky waters. But I'm going to see how this plays out for a couple weeks, and just see what happens, I guess. I think that my team could definitely put in some work. I think I'm definitely going to be a force to be reckoned with, and we shall just see how that happens. If you guys enjoyed, leave a like down below. Helps, of course, with me as a person. It helps make me feel better. If you also want to comment down below, comment what you think our record's going to be. Of course, I ask that every draft analysis, and every draft analysis, there's always those people that say I'm going to go O and X, depending on however many games are, whether it's 10 games or 11 or 12 games. There's 11 games a season, so it would be O and 11. And without further ado, I will see you guys next time in our next GBA video. Obviously, if you watch other videos on the channel, I will see you guys in that. But if you're just here for D-League content, the next game that I will see you in will be Randy Week 1 against Randy Week 1, coach of the Texas Rangers. It's going to be a very fun match. I hope you guys are excited for it, and I will see you guys then. Peace out.